All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Emily Fletcher here with me on the show. Emily is the founder of Ziva Meditation, as well as a best-selling author and host of the Why Isn't Everyone Doing This podcast. Hello, Emily. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hi, I'm so happy that we're doing this. I feel
Me
proud
too.
of us.
Me too. Me too. It's been we had quite a long conversation before turning on the microphone, so I feel like we're in very similar places in our journey at the moment in a lot of ways, and so I think this is going to be a great episode. And I'm going to start off with my cliche opening question, which is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
I love meditation. I love helping people to alchemize stress into bliss. And as of late, I have discovered that you can actually use your pleasure to pray. And so I think what I'm learning is that I'm an alchemist, and I help people to either turn stress into bliss or to turn their trauma into fuel for their dreams. And I recently learned that my power animal is a peacock, and peacocks eat poison.
Wow.
And they turn that poison into beauty. They eat venomous snakes and they transmute it into their feathers. And so it's like, oh, this all makes sense now. This is kind of what I've spent my life doing.
Wow. That's quite the elevator pitch.
I'm a professional peacock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel you on the alchemizing is everything.
Everything.
I wrote a book a couple years ago called The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance, and it's like,
Is it a small book? Like a tiny little pamphlet?
No, that is the original Golden Key from 100 years ago.
Okay.
Who I had a dream about the book, and then I looked it up and found that, and then I had all the synchronicity around that with the author. That
someone
book was
gifted me that book.
That book was published on my birthday when I found it on Amazon or whatever, and I have all this crazy synchronicity with my birthday. So yeah.
Cool.
That's a great book, and it's similar. It has this like gamified kind of element to it, like I dare you to try this, sort of thing.
Ooh.
And mine does as well. So there's some overlap with just like you and I, where we're at. I mean, that's probably the most common theme on the show is the insane amount of synchronicity that just never stops unfolding.
Yes.
And so
fractals of magic.
Exactly. Well, if you would, Emily, will you share a little bit about your backstory and whatever? Yeah. Just to give us all some context to who you are and how you got here.
Yeah. So I'm from Tallahassee, Florida, raised Southern Baptist.
Oh, I was raised Church of Christ.
My grandmother and father were Church of Christ.
Yeah, they're equally like dogmatic and like strict.
So sweaty dudes in khaki suits yelling at me, telling what I should and shouldn't do with my body.
Hell and brimstone.
There was this one preacher one day, and he's like, "My daughter, when she goes out on her first date, that guy's gonna have to crawl over Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John to get to my daughter." And I was like, "Okay,
wow, sounds kinky."
Like now I'd be maybe into that. But I remember at 5 years old, I asked my mom. I was like, "Mom, how do we know we're Baptist?" She was like, "Excuse me, 5-year-old child?" And I was like, "How do we know we're Baptist? Like, were we born Baptist? Did we choose it? Because your best friend is Buddhist, and that guy said she's going to burn in hell. And like, I don't get that." And so at 5 years old, my mom let me go to the temple, like the Temple Israel. It was like one Jewish temple, the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Catholic Church. So I realized at 5, I was like, oh, God is a disco ball. Like we're all looking at the same thing, but we're seeing different refractions of it. Like you see purple, you see green, but we're all talking about the same thing. Yeah. And I feel really grateful to my mom for letting me explore different modalities and like come to that visceral understanding at such an early age.
Yeah.
And then I became a musical theater major. I moved to New York. I was on Broadway for 10 years. The Cliff's Notes of that story is that I was really stressed out because I was understudying 3 of the lead roles in my last Broadway show. And that stress led me to meditation, and the meditation cured my insomnia on the first day. I stopped going gray. I was going gray at 26 years old. I didn't get sick for 8.5 years. And I really started enjoying my job again. And I just thought, why isn't everyone doing this? Like, it's not just the name of my podcast. I'm the type of person that when I find something that works, I'm like, I really want to let people know about it. So I left Broadway, I went to India. I trained for 3 years to be a teacher. And then I started Ziva back in 2007, I believe.
Mm.
And then I made the world's first online meditation training back in 2013. It was like
Wow.
before Headspace. It was before Oprah Chopra. And I didn't know if it was going to work. I just knew that what I was teaching was changing people's lives so profoundly.
Yeah.
And I knew that the internet was like, getting easier to work with. And I was like, I want to
Yeah.
get this around the world. And it
Yeah.
didn't really take off until my book came out. I have a book called Stress Less, Accomplish More. And that did very well. It was like, Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestseller, debuted at number 7 on Amazon. And that really grew Ziva Online. That grew the business quite a lot.
Yeah.
And so things were going great. I was married, business was rocking, 7-figure business. And I feel like me and Tim Ferriss and Oprah Winfrey, I would say, like, had a big hand in sort of rebranding meditation as a productivity tool.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2020 hit, and I think the whole world, I mean, obviously it changed in a myriad of ways, but one of the things that I've been tuning into is that it feels like we went from this hyper masculine achievement, external oriented way of being into one of more feminine, more internal, one of more alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so regardless of gender, I just think that the game has changed on the planet. And I think that it's a bit more internal. And in 2020, I also went through a divorce and then had a full Kundalini awakening. And nature started fire hosing me with this PhD in sacred sexuality. And I was like, thank you. But it feels like it was not just for my own edification. It feels like, hey, that thing that you did for meditation, you helped to make meditation attractive and accessible to a mainstream audience. Well, now we need you to do that for these even more potent and even more taboo modalities, because the world is really stressed and really sick and things are about to get really intense. Like we can feel it. Like we can feel that the intensity is kicking up, the energy is kicking up, the darkness is getting darker. And I really believe that nature is a perfect accountant. And so as things continue to get more dark, we're going to need to bring more light. Not even need. It's just we have an opportunity and even a responsibility to bring more light. And so I've birthed this new modality. It's an embodied manifesting modality called Ziva Magic. And I'm in the process of launching it right now. And I'm so outrageously excited about it, because it's just been the most powerful, transformative, alchemical, magic feeling tool I've ever found. And again, I'm just like, why isn't everyone doing this? Like, why isn't everyone using their pleasure to pray? So I'm in the middle of a big life change right now. Because I think when you have the audacity to say, I'm going to launch something called Ziva Magic into the world, nature's like, anything that's not magic in your life, we're going to go ahead and clean that up. So I'm in a deep grief process right now.
Wow. Yeah. It's interesting because this come up a lot, and I have various friends who, tantrikas, and their whole thing is focusing on this, accessing the pleasure portal, if you will, to tap into manifestation and creating more. And like you said, it's kind of taboo. And so, and I think they all, coming at it from a spiritual perspective and with such pure intention, I think it really brings such beauty to something that oftentimes, you look at like porn or whatever, and it's the other end of that, the other extreme. So I think it's awesome to anyone willing to kind of go that direction. And
I think, and thanks for naming that, because there is so much darkness. Like my analogy that I use is, imagine if from the time you were born, the only thing you ever heard about food was how dangerous it is and how poisonous it is and how toxic it is and how it can cause cancer and how it can give you cholesterol and give you a heart attack. If that's all anyone ever said about food, that's similar to the conversation that we're having around sexuality, where it's just like, it's dangerous. You're going to get pregnant. You're going to get STDs. You're going to go to hell. You're going to get slut shamed. It's dangerous and bad, and be careful. And no one's talking about the fact that it can be a pathway to the divine, that ecstasy actually for thousands of years was used as a pathway to the divine, and that it is one of the most healing and alchemical forces on the planet. And I've also found one of the most magnetic. So it is a way to supercharge your manifestations. And that's really the angle that I'm most fascinated by, is how can we harness the most creative and magnetic force on the planet, which is our sexual energy, simply to become a magnet for that which we desire. And then on the way to that, the thing I've fallen in love with even more is that once you tap into what I call creation energy, right? It's just energy that creates. It has the ability to transmute your rage, your grief, your trauma, your disappointment, your heartbreak. It's like you can pour it into that fire. And I've just been amazed at how quickly this eros or this creation energy will transmute those things, like intergenerational trauma, recent trauma, severe trauma. It's just like in a few days, people are vibrating differently. They look younger, they look hotter, they look happier, they feel more safe in their bodies. And it's like, wow, there's a reason why these tools have been so taboo. I mean, similar to psychedelics, right? It's like anything that's going to remind you of your own divinity. Yeah. Anything that really like democratizes God, you know, the institutions that the powers that be really want to put a lockdown on that so that we forget just how creative and powerful we are.
Yeah. They want to make sure they can keep the collection plate going. Right. And if you're accessing directly, like that's no bueno.
Breaks the funnel.
Yeah. Right.
Breaks the collection funnel.
Exactly. So I'd love to hear sort of whatever you care to share about the actual, because it is a fascinating thing to think about, like pleasure, sexuality, orgasm, and how that can be utilized as a tool to manifest. Right. Yeah. And so, I'd love to, just hear your thoughts on that.
So I think we could just, like anybody listening, if there's something, because we all have something that we want, right? Like, unless you're dead, you likely have something that you're desiring right now. It might be 1 million followers on your podcast, a new love, a new home, a baby, a job, a promotion at your job, like whatever it is that you're looking to manifest, you can apply this formula to it. So the Ziva Magic formula is very simple. And it rhymes, which I like. It's visualize, alchemize, magnetize. So what I do is that I just have people drop into that still, quiet space. And most of my students are meditators. You know, most of them have done Ziva Onlines. We just drop into that space. But even if you don't have a meditation practice, you drop in. And then from that place of coherence, I simply ask you, like, what would you love? What would you love? And if there's nothing that you would desire, it's like, hey, hey, nature, how would you love to use me? Right. Which is, I think the more advanced you get in your spiritual practice, it's kind of like I call it spiritual per se. Yeah. Per se is like the fanciest restaurant in New York, where you're just like, let the chef decide, you know, where you're just like, I'm here. I'm at your service. Use me as you will. I know what you're going to come up with is better than what I could.
Yeah. I think that's the inevitable place we all get to, as we're doing and trying to figure out what to pour ourselves into, you know, constantly.
So you just basically, what would I love? Like, what's the desire? And then we visualize that as if it's already happened, you know, manifesting one-on-one. You see this dream as if it's already happened. And then there's likely a reason why this dream has not shown up yet, right? Like, and for most of us, it's that we're just simply not an energetic match for the dream right now. Yep. Maybe there's some unprocessed grief or rage or limiting beliefs or trauma that's stored in the body. And even though we want it, even though we're taking action, if we don't believe that we deserve the thing, then nature cannot give it to us. Yeah. So this is a part of manifesting that I think a lot of people miss, and it's the alchemy. And so what I have people do is like lean into the rage that the thing hasn't shown up yet. Lean into the sorrow that it may never show up. And we actually do a bit of IFS, like internal family system or parts work. And we give this little kid inside the microphone to express this sacred rage, the sacred sorrow. And we do it through dance. And what is fascinating about this is that so many of us since infancy have been told not to feel our feelings. You know, shh, don't cry, have a toy. Shh, don't cry, have a bottle. Shh, don't cry, have an iPad. Have some booze, have some pills, have some Adderall, but don't feel your feelings. And so what the emotional alchemy does is that it gives people the tools to really feel their feelings, which I believe is a superpower. And then that alchemy clears the channel. And then from there, we magnetize. Actually give people the tools to turn on, again, the most creative and magnetic force on the planet, which is their own life force energy, their own creation energy. And you can do that with breath. You can do that with sound. You can do that with energy. And so I help people to get themselves into these very heightened states. And then from this state, you then visualize the dream again. You visualize it from like having alchemized the resistance and from a place of feeling really good and really safe in your body. Because I believe that the world's simplest manifestation formula is feel good, place the order, feel good. Feel good, place the order, place the order, feel good. Like, it's very simple. The better you feel, the better quality things you're going to attract. And so all we're doing with Ziva Magic is that we're awakening this endogenous pharmacology, like the neurochemistry that nature has already installed inside of us, and giving people a very simple but effective formula to feel good inside of their own bodies. And then when you think about the dream, not even think about, when you drop into the visceral five senses reality of the dream, from that place of being super alive, super turned on, what happens is that the dream starts to feel safe in the nervous system. Because again, we cannot manifest something that does not feel safe to the body. And even if it's like the thing you've been wanting since you were a child, if it doesn't feel safe, you can't manifest it. And so again, this pleasure, you're using your pleasure to pray. And what it does is that when the opportunity arrives, which it will, you greet it like a long lost lover instead of like freaking out and self-sabotaging because you think it can make or break you.
Interesting. So you're not necessarily talking about it being, I mean, I'm sure you could talk about how to integrate all of this with a sexual experience, but you're like what you just laid out, it doesn't really necessarily have to do with anyone else or anything sexual per se, right?
No, I mean, you could do this with a partner, but I teach people how to do it on their own.
Cool.
And then once you know how to do it on your own, you could certainly do it with a partner. I mean, anytime you're praying in groups or praying with other people, I do think that amplifies it like strengthens the antenna. So you absolutely could, but what I teach is more individual. Like on our retreats, people are in their own energy. You know, lights are low, eye mask, blankets on. It's not like I'm not teaching couples work or tantra retreats. However, many people then go home and then they practice with their partners. And my dream, like my sort of big audacious dream, is doing large scale activations at the sacred sites on the planet. And so I think the first one's going to be Cairo in Egypt and the pyramids there, because we already have these portal points. I mean, we already have these like antennas, these grids in the Earth's ley lines. And so I have this theory that if we get enough people in these heightened states of consciousness holding a shared vision for the species, that we can create magic, that we can actually shift the timeline. And so if you're like, that's crazy, that's wild. And it's like, well, to me, what's crazy is following predictive analytics and like continuing on the timeline and the trajectory that humans are currently on, which is pretty much certain extinction.
Yeah.
You know, within a few hundred years, like that's where we're heading. And so it's like, well, if we have another alternative that feels really good and that works, it seems kind of crazy to me to not use that. Right. And it also seems that I could very much be in an echo chamber, but it feels like so many of these different ancient technologies are wanting to be rediscovered. You know, the mystery schools, the Magdalene lineages, the Isis lineages, the technologies from the pyramids, from Teotihuacan, from Indonesia. Like so many people, certainly in my circles, are recognizing this ancient wisdom. And it feels like nature's like, hey, things are about to get really intense. You're going to need to be buttressed. And so I think that as the intensity increases on the planet, and potentially as things get more dark, as the unsustainable old models are falling away, I think it's really important that we equip people with the tools to come home to themselves, to feel safe in their body, and actually to feel good in their bodies. Because at the end of the day, that's why we're here. Like, I really believe that spiritually we incarnated to have a good time. And so it might seem a little frivolous, but I actually think it's anything but. If we can like learn to dance in the rain, if we can learn to feel safe and pleasurable inside of things that will inevitably be destroyed in the next, 3 to 10 years, I think it's going to not only help our experience as we go through it, but also help us to put our attention on birthing the new earth, the more beautiful earth that our hearts know is possible, as Charles Eisenstein would say.
Right. Yeah. That's really powerful. And I think you're 100% right. It's like what we've done hasn't worked. And if we can do anything and it feeling good along the way, I mean, that's really like this book, Letting Go, we talked about a little bit before we were recording. I was telling you that I was reading by David Hawkins, and he named off at the beginning of the book. I don't know if you've read it or not, but at the beginning he names off every spiritual practice you can think of for like pages. Like he's like, there's this approach to finding it or learning how to just, let go of and surrender to everything. And I'm still very early in the book, but I thought that was like, this is the most powerful practice that we can employ, is learning how to like, and I think that's what you were just referencing to some degree, like, hey, there's a lot coming and we're going to need to be able to stay light about it and sort of surrender to it and ride the wave. And, tools to do that are of paramount importance.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting is that to me, the meditation that I teach, like Ziva, is very much surrender school. And the mantras, which they're ancient Sanskrit primordial sounds that don't have any meaning, but the whole point of them is to let go, is to move you beyond the realm of thinking into the realm of being. Cool. And that's what I've been teaching for the past 16 years. And I think that there is so much power in that. And so that's certainly the current lesson that I'm in right now of can I let go of my old identity? Can I let go of my old reality, even though I loved it so much?
Yeah.
I think that what Ziva Magic is going to help people with more is giving them the somatic tools to actually name and feel and move the feelings, the fear, the grief, the sadness, the anguish of watching, institutions that, good, bad, or otherwise, brought us comfort. The banking system, the politics system, medicine as we knew it, farming as we knew it, all this is going to go away. Yeah. It's going to be reinvented, and it will likely be a little scary. Yeah. Even if you're moving into a better house, moving kind of sucks. Yeah, right. And so it can be kind of hard to put your whole life in boxes. And so for me, the point of Ziva Magic is to give people the tools to somatically process and transmute that pain. And then also to give them the tools to put their attention on what do they want to birth versus even putting the attention on letting go, which is also a necessary part of the process. Mm-hmm. But for me, I find that meditation allows me to really practice dying. To me, meditation is a twice-a-day death practice. Yeah. So that when we face these big transitions in life, we've gotten good at not identifying exclusively with the identity, the ego, or the body. Every day, twice a day, I'm reminding myself that I am God pretending to be human. Right. Every day, twice a day, I remember that I am the ocean pretending to be the wave.
Yeah. Right. And Eckhart Tolle says, the trick is to die before you die and realize there is no death, right?
Well, that's from Eleusis. Have you read anything? Have you read The Immortality Key yet?
No, I have not.
Okay, so just stop me if this gets boring, but this is the thing I'm very left about. I'm going to Europe on Saturday for part 2 of a priestess pilgrimage. Wow. So last summer I went on a priestess pilgrimage with my best friend Layla, and we went to Eleusis, Delphi, and Crete. But our trip was very much inspired by a book called The Immortality Key, written by Brian Maresco, who is a man who's sober and a lawyer and a family man. And he spent 10 years in the Vatican and private papal library, proving that much of Western civilization, including Paleo-Christianity, democracy, and theater, were born out of these pagan medicine fertility rituals happening in Eleusis, Greece, 45 minutes outside of Athens. And I'm talking Aristotle, Plato, Euripides, all of these fathers of Western civilization as we knew it were going and basically doing drugs and having sex in Eleusis to die before they died. Wow. They were serving in these chalices, something called ergot, which is the precursor to LSD.
Right.
And so now Brian has basically found the actual chalice, and then we have the technology now to look at what they were serving and prove it. So Brian now has, from the Papal and Vatican Library, proof, and now biological proof from analyzing the chalice. And so on Saturday, I'm going to get to film. I'm going to be on set where they're filming a documentary of it. Wow. And on the day that I did a mushroom ceremony in the Plutonian cave in Eleusis and came out and found out that my friends were building a chalice for Burning Man, and then did a big activation at Burning Man last year. So it's the fact that you just said that particular quote from Eckhart Tolle. It's the whole, they would say you go to Eleusis to die before you die. Wow. And they say if you haven't died before you died, then you've never really lived. Wow. And so this is a big theme in my life right now. So talk about some synchronicities.
Yeah, right. We're doing it. Very exciting. How long are you going to be there?
I'll be on the pilgrimage for a week, and then I'm teaching in Ibiza for a week. I'm running a festival in Ibiza.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Sounds like quite the adventure you're about to embark on.
Yep.
Wow.
I'm just buckle your seatbelt. My life is wild right now.
Yeah. Seems like it. Like it. Well, so what, I guess, our time goes so quick with these things. My aim with anyone that I talk to is how can I get as much value for the listeners as possible? And so what, I've got a bunch of things here that I know you talk about that we could kind of go down, but what comes up for you when I ask you, if you could share anything with the audience right now, based off where you're at in your journey, what do you think is the most beneficial thing you could share?
Thanks for asking that. To me, the theme that's coming up big for me and that I see happening, at least in my circles, is it's so simple, but I think that the most profound truths are the simplest. But it's really, really learning how to feel our feelings.
Yeah.
That, like, knowing in your body that feelings are meant for feeling.
Yeah.
And because there's so much conditioning in the other direction of that.
Yep.
And it's just like watching how many times you shame yourself. You cry, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, I'm crying. Oh, I'll be fine in a minute. Or like your kid falls down and skins their knee and you run over and say, you're fine, you're
Yep.
okay. It's like, no, they're scared. They're in pain. Don't tell them that they're okay. Don't tell yourself that you're okay. Like, how do we get okay not being okay?
Yeah.
And then in that permission slip to feel the feelings fully, what I found is that there's a bit of ecstasy. There's like a kernel of ecstasy that happens in the expression of the feelings. And then the thing that I'm super hepped up on right now is just this idea that the very same muscle that you build to hold space for yourself is the same muscle that allows you to have the capacity to hold pleasure. And so it's like, if you don't know how to feel your pain, good luck feeling the full spectrum of your pleasure.
Right.
And since most of us have been numbing so intensely for so many decades, and then also we're going into like the most undersexed generation of, like, people are having less sex than they've ever had. And I mean, one is loneliness and screens and all of that, but I also think that our capacity for pleasure has diminished because we've lost our capacity for pain. And but the thing is, it doesn't take the pain away. It just pushes it down and it gets stronger.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I would love for people to understand, is that unfelt feelings do not go away. They intensify.
Yeah.
That actually we have an opportunity to learn our lessons on the spiritual plane. And that's the fastest and the cheapest place to do it.
Yeah.
But if we don't do it there, then we have to pay the therapist $200 a week for decades. And then if we don't learn it there, then we have to cut it out as cancer. And it just gets slower and more expensive to heal the more manifest and the more into the 3D it becomes.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this sacred sexuality work, is just that I've seen the profundity and the speed of the healing. That it's the only thing that I've found that seems to be big enough and potent enough to metabolize the level of suffering that's happening on the planet right now.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. The avoidance and repression, suppression of feelings is like such, it's just such a common thing. I mean, I know with myself, definitely like disassociation or avoidance is like or keep myself really busy. We like run from it. And when you do
we
that,
scroll, we overschedule ourselves.
Yeah. Right. And you're not really escaping anything. You're just prolonging and
then it just gets louder.
Yeah.
It's like this pain is like a little kid and it's like, mom, 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 mom.
Right.
And then it's going to start throwing shit against the wall and breaking, like breaking stuff. And so it's like, you best listen when it's whispering.
Right.
And the thing is, and then this is the thing I want to share, is that it doesn't have to take too long.
Yeah.
Like my friend Joan Rosenberg, she's a PhD. She wrote a book that said 90 seconds to a life you love. And she said that most feelings last for 90 seconds. That waves of emotion, even the most intense emotion, is 90 seconds.
Wow.
And then on the other side of feeling it is bliss. I went on a darkness retreat one time. I was in a cave for 5 days of complete darkness.
Oh, wow.
And the gift of that, which any single mom running a 7-figure company is like, great, sign me up. Like, I just slept for 3 days. I was like, it sounds like heaven.
Yeah, right.
And so for the first 2.5 days I slept. But then your body doesn't sleep anymore, and you don't know what day or night is. And they drop off like one sandwich a day, make you a fire. You can't see it, but it gives warmth.
Mm-hmm.
And then, meditate, take a bath, go to the bathroom, exercise. And I have 23 hours left with nothing to do.
Yeah.
And so I finally just got so bored that I felt my feelings.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, these things just wanted to be felt.
Yeah.
They just wanted to be felt. That's all. Yeah. And then on the other side of feeling them is liberation, is space, is more space for pleasure.
Yeah. I love that. And the thing is these emotions then, lead to thoughts. And then what happens is a lot of times, of course, we start following thoughts, which just exacerbate. And it's like these thoughts are just like, they're all kind of fraudulent. It's just like idea after idea after idea after iteration after fantasy after, seeing it through this lens, seeing it through that lens. And if you can just go straight to the source of the emotion piece of it and feeling it, and like not get caught up on, the thought is like bait. Like, oh, you want take this bait? Oh, okay. Oh, and here's more. And oh, you took it? Cool. Let's build on that. Let's build on that. Let's create a story. Let's create a narrative. Let's create you're a victim. Let's create whatever fantasy about, and instead just going to the actual underlying feeling and sitting with that, not saying when the thoughts arise, like, thank you, but no, thank you. I'm not going to follow that. I'm just going to feel the feeling that is underlying it. I think it's like a really, really powerful thing.
Yeah. Thank you for naming that. And also like in the body.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I think this is also highlighting what we were talking about earlier of like the masculine paradigm into the more feminine paradigm, that the masculine is the thought. It is the solution. I have a thought. I think that this thing is making me feel this feeling. This feeling is uncomfortable. I don't want to feel that. I've never been taught how to go into my body. So I'm going to keep putting energy into my mind on how to solve the problem, which is a very masculine paradigm.
Yeah.
And so I think this is also what I think is happening on the planet, and why I'm so excited about Ziva Magic is that it's a feminine paradigm. Like, let's go into the body. Yeah. It doesn't mean male or female. It just means that, the hero's journey is external. The heroine's journey is internal. And we all have masculine and feminine. We all need both. And then if you can do both, the masculine and the feminine, that's when you create the polarity. That's when you create the magnetism. And that's when life starts to feel really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well said. So yeah, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about just the manifestation project process. I mean, obviously you've achieved so much, and I know so many people listening to this are figuring out in different places in their journey of how do I manifest more in my life. And so yeah, I'd love to just hear you speak more in general on that particular part.
So I'll start with the simple, but I think sometimes when things are simple, we think they're easy and we overlook them. Like, the meditation style that I teach is the simplest technique I've ever found, and also the most profound. So I think the very simple first step on manifesting is knowing what the fuck you want.
Yeah.
And like, Oprah Winfrey says the most successful people on the planet know what they want. And I've been teaching manifesting since about 2017. And I'd say that's the number one thing I come against. It's like, Emily, I don't know what I want.
Yeah. What do you do when you're in a state of uncertainty about what to do or where to pour your energy next?
Yeah. So I think there's two likely paths there. One is we need to go in the body. We need to actually like feel the unfelt feelings, and then the desires on the other side of that. But oftentimes I don't know what I want is a lack of deserving power masquerading as indecision. Like, I actually don't believe that I deserve this thing. I really want it, but I don't believe that I deserve it. So I don't even believe that it's possible. So I'm not going to name it. For example, I was at Burning Man a few weeks ago, and there was this like outrageously beautiful 44-year-old woman, single, very wealthy, like came from a very wealthy family, like catch of the century, like looked like a Barbie doll from like one of the wealthiest families on the planet. Like you can, like anyone would have won the lottery to be with this woman. Okay.
Right.
And I was like, all right, tell me about your person. She knew I was into manifesting. She's like, I'm trying to manifest my person. And I was asking her questions like, do you want to have a kid? And she was like, no, this, that, and the other. But I could tell, you could just feel that she actually did want a child. And so I kept asking her questions. And then she just starts bawling, crying. She's like, yes. And I was like, if you could have a magic wand, you go out and you ride your bike on a playa and you meet your person right now. You're pregnant in 2 months. Do you want a family?
Wow.
And she starts crying, and she was like, yes, I do.
Wow.
And so the thing that struck me was like, this was actually her desire. She actually wants a family, but because she has a story that she's 44, that it's too late, she like wouldn't even let herself want it.
Yeah.
And I was like, with you not admitting that dream, if you meet your person, but you've convinced yourself that your intellect, that you don't want the baby, you're actually like blocking the dream from happening because you're not willing to admit the actual desire.
Yeah.
And how many times do we do that where we're like, I do want this job, but I'm not even going to go after it because I don't think my resume is fancy enough. Or, so it's like really getting clear on what are those sneaky limiting beliefs that are keeping you from believing that you deserve your dream. And obviously every hammer finds a nail. But what I found is the most effective tool to up-level your deserving power is meditation, because meditation is actually defragging your brain computer. It's like defragging the nervous system. It's getting rid of all the old stress in your body from the past. And it is that accumulation of stress and trauma in your cells that keeps you from being a vibrational match for your dream, that keeps you from believing that you deserve them. So if you start to get into a regular practice of meditation and plugging into the unmanifest and eradicating the old stresses from your body and up-leveling your state of consciousness, it's like, even if you're not technically manifesting, bit by bit, day by day, your vibration is going to change. What you believe you deserve is going to change. Your actual cognitive abilities will change. And then if you combine that sort of system hardware reset, if you combine that with the software upgrade of the manifesting practice, of spending time asking the question, what would I love? That's when I find the magic really happens. It's this combination of meditation and manifesting where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I one of the things that I've been slow to do, having been on a spiritual path for a very long time and done this podcast for a very long time and has reached a lot of people, and is really committing to the practices. And having done that more, in recent times, it's like, oh my gosh, it's crazy not to be meditating and working in the quantum field and accessing these heightened states of emotion. And like,
it's crazy to not do this. Like, why isn't everyone doing this?
Why like your podcast? Why isn't everyone doing this?
Why isn't everyone praying? Why isn't everyone working on the quantum? Like, prayer, turns out it works.
Yeah.
Like, I do a game every morning. This is a very valuable thing I can offer the audience as well. I have a game that I play with myself every morning where I journal just whenever I wake up. Like, I try to do it before I leave my bedroom. Little tiny journal. I just write down my day in past tense. The podcast was amazing. I meditated twice. I had the best workout. My son felt so safe and loved. My dream home is on the way. My dream team is on the way. I got surprise checks in the mail. And then it happens. Right? Yeah. Like, I write it down and it's like a magic wand, and then usually it happens. But if we forget to do it and we don't take the time to place the order with the cosmic waitress at the cosmic restaurant, she can't bring us the meal. Right? Like, our angels cannot help us without our consent. And a lot of us are forgetting to ask for help.
Yeah. Journal in past tense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
At the beginning of your day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Right.
And then when I do my masterminds, I pair people up and then I have them report back. At the end of the day, I have them report back, yes, no, on the way, even better. And then they document their surprise magic. So then what you're doing is that you're programming your recency bias and your confirmation bias to prove to yourself what a good manifester you are. You're using your brain, that same thing that wants to problem solve. If you leave it unchecked, you're utilizing that same thing to prove to yourself how magic you are.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely not a bad idea, to prove yourself you're super capable and magical.
Yeah. And that reminding yourself that you have a whole team of whatever you want to call them. But like, there are energies in the unseen realm that are thrilled to help you, but they have good manners. So they're not going to help you without your consent. Like, anyone who has a child, like, try and this morning I tried to put a button-up shirt on my son. Nope. He does not like buttons. He does not like buttons. Not a chance am I getting that shirt on him. T-shirt, no problem. So I have to have his consent before I think that shirt looks better on him.
Yeah.
He does not agree. So we have to consent to our angel's help.
Right. How old is he?
He's 6.
Oh, cute. It's a fun age.
So fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, speaking of magic, one of the things I always love to hear are stories of synchronicity, serendipity, positive paranormal stories. I mean, I got to think you have one at least. certainly more than one, but I'll let you off the hook with just sharing one, but you can share more too, if you want. But, yeah, I'd love to hear any kind of inspired story time from you that you can conjure up.
I mean, there really are so, here's a great one. Okay. So when I was in 7th or 8th grade, my teachers asked, when I was in 8th grade, my teachers asked me if I would teach the Egyptian history class to the 6th graders. And I just thought it was like, oh, this is just what the 8th graders just help out the 6th graders. I just thought that was like a normal thing. That was not a normal thing. Like they asked me at 8th grade to teach 6th graders Egyptian history. I've always had a very deep love affair and like connection with Egypt. I didn't really understand why. I just thought it's cool. The pyramids are cool. What are they? Yeah. Who built them? How did they get there?
Right.
And then I had a medicine ceremony. My first week that I ever did was hired to do sacred sexuality work. It was Aubrey Marcus and Vailana Marcus. I did a week-long intensive with them. And they very kindly gifted me this day-long session. So they had hired me, but during this week, they gifted me this day long where they did something called the God Bomb. And we've talked about this publicly. They've given me their consent to share of what we did, but it was a beautiful, like 8-hour medicine ceremony. One of the most psychedelic experiences of my life. And in it, I was in the pyramids again, but it was past and future. It was like timelines going over on itself. So then I'm just like stringing the string of all the serendipities. Then one of my friends, and this is going to get weird. So like, if you're weirded out, like, here we go.
Hit me with the weird.
One of my friends did ayahuasca and she comes out of the session and she calls me the next day and she's like, Emily, I think that you were one of the aliens that gave the Egyptians the codes on how to build the pyramids. And I was like,
wow,
cool. What?
That's quite the ayahuasca download.
And imagine enough to call me after the ceremony. I wasn't like I was in the room with her. So then I'm at a party and I see Robert Edward Grant. And I had heard him, I don't know if you know him, he's a polymath. And so I had heard him on a podcast quoting me. And I was like, Robert Edward Grant is quoting me. And I'll give you the line that he was quoting. It's basically the Vedas according to Emily, which he said, the one became two for the joy of becoming one again. Right? Like nothingness became somethingness for the joy of becoming nothingness again. But we forget because it's fun to remember. Right. So I see Robert at a party. I beeline to him and I was so excited to meet him. And I said, hey, one of my friends said that she thought I was one of the aliens that gave the Egyptians the codes to build the pyramid. He said,
he's deep in the pyramid. He's deep working in I actually just saw him in the Burn and hung out a while, and he was showing some of the stuff that he has uncovered there that they'd never seen before. And
yeah. So I tell him that, and he's like, oh, well, that would mean you're Arcturian, because there's Alpha Chi Omega on the Arcturian mothership. And Robert is the person who discovered the first encryption in the king's chamber in the pyramid. Right. So the king's chamber is famously no hieroglyphs. There's no markings on the wall. Robert had a memory of when the Alpha Chi Omega was being embossed into the sarcophagus in the king's chamber, and he goes over and he puts his hands on it, and it's very faint, but it's there, Alpha Chi Omega on the sarcophagus. Yeah. So this leads him on this massive discovery, which, by the way, if you don't know Robert, he discovered a new chamber inside of the Great Pyramid based on studying Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. Yeah. So because of that, so they discovered a new chamber, right? Can you imagine one of the studied buildings in history? And they just discovered this thing based on Robert's math and his connection with Leonardo da Vinci. So now he has unprecedented access to the pyramids. So cut to last summer, I'm reading a book called The Law of One, like the book of Ra, like Law of One. And we get to the part where they're talking about the pyramids and sound healing. And as I'm reading it, Robert texts me and he's like, Emily, I'm taking a group of people to Egypt in December. I want you to come as my guest. So I was like, amazing. So then cut to, I'm in the pyramids in Egypt with Robert and Vailana and having like a full soul remembrance, like going into deep. I've never been in something that felt more like a temple space in my life. And I had done this priestess pilgrimage and it just felt like I was like, oh, right. Priestesses need temples. Like you need to have the space to do the magic. Yeah. And it was just one of the most profound, beautiful experiences of my life. Wow. And it felt like we were making heaven on earth. Yeah. But it was like a 20-point serendipity synchronicity. And it's not over yet. Like it just keeps unfolding. And I think that this is why Oh, this is another one. So I think the dream now is like to do the Ziva magic activations at the pyramids.
Mm.
And then 2 days ago, I had Deborah Silverman on my podcast. She's an
Mm.
astrologer. She's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
She reads my chart. My chart is shaped like a pyramid. It looks exactly like a three-dimensional pyramid. And by the way, Robert's is the same. His chart is the same coordinates as the king's chamber, and mine is the pyramid.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. That's wild. It's really fascinating when, you know, you see these physical manifestations of, you know, something. It's just like, yeah, it's just wild how it can be represented in so many ways. It's so fractalized, right?
Yes. Yes. Fractals on fractals on fractals. And then the more you see the magic, the more you see the magic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had something similar recently that was really cool. So I have like crazy synchronicity with my birthday, and listeners,
what is your birthday?
July 28th.
Okay.
And so I if I told it all, it'd take like 20 minutes, but I'll just tell like cliff notes. Like my dad was 28 and had me on July 28th. It was also his grandmother's birthday. My great grandmother, her mother died on that day. My ex-business partner and villain in my hero's journey tale I write about in my book, his baby mom and grandmother, July 28th. I met two women on July 28th, 2012. One of them became my partner, and her boyfriend before me committed suicide on July 28th. His name was Anson. All my relatives are from Anson, North Carolina with that birthday. The other girl with her had two other good girlfriends who have been my partners over the last 3 years, including it's been a portal since 2012. And me and my partner just split a few weeks ago. So it's been a 12-year cycle of relationships from that meeting. And it just goes on and on. And I had, I was talking about this with, I don't know if you know Alunia Noel. She's a channel, really powerful. I mean, I had her on the show a while back, and she, you know, a lot of people tapping into psychic ability or channeling, did like a reading, and it's really cool when you get something that's like really potent. And, you know, like she's talking to my guides, and they're like, wow, your guides are saying you're like a delicious berry cobbler. That's, you know, and that was the last food I'd eaten. Like at that, you know, so it's like a cool validation. And she was talking, I brought up the birthday thing because that's just like, literally I could go on 10 more minutes with all the things with it. It's wild. And she was like, oh, it's interesting. As she's talking to my guide in tapping in, she's like, it's tied to this like portal, pension, time, space kind of thing. And you are a keeper of this beyond the physical. And it's a very potent, so you attract a lot of it around you, and it can hyper manifest in both directions. So you got to be it's very potent. And it was cool because she said, and it's tied to the template for humanity in some way. And the day before, I'd seen a guy post something, and he was, I forget his name, but it stuck out to me because he's like, the one turns into 12 oversouls, and then 12 oversouls into 12 under that, 12 each under that. And then I forget how exactly I put it. And then 12 each under that of like disciples. And if you do the math, it's 12 times 12 times 12. It's like 1,728 different versions of you. Oh. So I'm like, oh, the 1 in 728. And so I'd asked, it's funny, I just seen that for the first, because I've been on this quest. Like, I want to understand more. What is this? You know, and the day before I'd seen that, and it jumped out at me because the 1,728. And she's like, oh, it's tied to this template for how humanity is like, you know,
wow. Created. I hope you have Robert on the show, and you should have Robert geek out on that.
You know, I've had Robert on a couple times. I know Robert pretty well, and I don't know if I've ever talked to him about it.
You should totally talk about this. You can give him any number, you know, and he just will have.
Yeah, I haven't ever talked to him. Like,
well, now you have your third time.
It's funny. I had a psychic on years ago, intuitive, and she's like, "I'm going to meditate and find out for you." And I'm like, real excited, thinking the universe is going to give me this golden nugget. And she just comes back. She goes, "Oh, it's just going to keep happening and showing up for you is all they would show me." And she goes, "But I did find this," and it was a article in England or something where they did a survey to try and figure out the best day to be born. And the results, I mean, which is a silly idea, right? And the results of their whole, you know, whatever the whole practice that they did and all the people they interviewed and whatever was July 28th. And so that was,
Cool.
and I'm just
That
like,
sounds
of
like
course, I'm
something.
thinking I'm going to get this super sacred next level, beyond the veil answer. And the psychic's like, oh, you're going to get more of it. Here's an article that says it's the best day to, I'm like, fuck. So yeah, really wild.
Wow.
So I just love it when I see that. Like you said, it's like encoded in your chart, and it's just like reflection. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And it's like I think it's a fun lens through which to see reality, right? Like if you're looking at the lens through which of July 28th, it's like you're looking for it, but I'm now like in the major Egypt filter.
Yeah.
So, what you put your attention on grows. So I just keep seeing more and more of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's, Egypt seems to really draw a lot of people. I have that same woman that I just referenced who's doing the reading. She's in Egypt right now for 6 weeks with a big group. And she had this wild kind of experience there where Isis was coming through and like leading her to, different places and, like a task to complete,
Yeah, she does that. So I would say that Isis is I think Isis is the one pulling the strings on everything that I just mentioned. I've never had such a strong relationship with the unseen as I do through her.
Wow.
Yeah.
How does that manifest for you? I mean, do you feel like you're having communication with Isis? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that my ex-partner, my amazing ex-partner, Adam, my first birthday that we were together, he threw me this like birthday weekend that was.
What's your birthday? Just curious.
March 27th.
Okay. Cool.
And it was kind of like at the beginning, kind of like a cute, we're going to do like a ritual initiation. Like he was going to initiate me as the high priestess of embodied joy, kind of as a joke, but it ended up like not being a joke at all. And it ended up, and he basically built an Isis temple, and everyone who came, there was 24 people, they all had to bring a ceremony and they had to write a spell, and he had them all calligraphied in this leather bound book. And he got me a magic wand. And by the time it was like 3 hours, he built an off-Broadway style set. And
wow.
And by the end of it, and I didn't, by the way, I like vaguely knew that there was a goddess Isis, but I had no relationship with her.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, I was not initiated as the high priestess of embodied joy, but I do think I got initiated as an Isis, like temple priestess. And because by the end of it was just like, I could invoke her on command. Like all of these gifts came online. Anytime, like it's the oracle deck I feel the most drawn to in Egypt. And when I'm praying, like people just say, like anyone who's psychic or can tap into other realms. Like I'll walk in a room and they're just like, whoa, I feel Isis energy. Like I can feel Isis here now without me saying anything about it.
Wow.
And so to me, I mean, it's just like we're anthropomorphizing God. It's just a fractal of the divine.
Right. It's one,
and I really believe
one face.
It's one face of the divine. And I really, like, I was raised in the Vedas, and according to the Vedas, there's only one thing and we're all it. And so any sort of external representation of the divine is really just highlighting a part of your own consciousness.
Right.
And so for me, Isis is representative of the piece of that is motherhood and fertility and sex magic. And what I love about Isis is that she's, in most female iconography, you're either the virgin or the whore. Right? There's either the mother or the whore. And Isis is both. Like she has the mother archetype and she has the sex archetype.
Yeah.
And that is very much, I have a kids meditation training, and now I'm about to launch like a training with sexual energy. My motherhood is my number one priority, followed very shortly after by, helping people to use their sexual energy to pray. Yeah. So I think that's why I feel so drawn to her, is that the things that she represents are very important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, all of these different archetypes are just, I think of a friend, one of my early podcast, a performer, and she was talking about how, she started doing this awesome performance art, and it was all taking women and having them you'll be the Isis archetype. You'll be this, you'll be that. And it was meant to be like, performative and fun. And she's like, and then one night, like we're doing this, our performance, and it like something like cracked open. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're actually invoking these entities are real, and they're here and now,
Yes. Like that's the thing, is like, you can think you're doing ritual theater.
Yeah.
And then it's not theater. And so I think it's like, not even tricky, but it's just to know that it's not hyperbole to say like there are entities and beings that want to help you, but they cannot without your consent.
Yeah.
So if you're going to open up the portal and invite them in, like they will come in.
Yeah.
But I think that we've convinced ourselves that they're not there because we've spent so many years avoiding them or denying them.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Well, I can't believe we're almost to an hour. This has been awesome.
We really went a wide range.
Yeah, we did.
We didn't talk about meditation too much. So I guess if I were to give like one valuable thing on meditation is just that, because, you said yourself, you're like, I haven't really been practicing too much. And I think that one of the things that keeps people from practicing is a very simple but powerful misconception, is that the point of meditation is to clear the mind. Mm-hmm. And I found that is not at all the case, it is impossible to give the brain a command to stop thinking. But because people think that is the goal, they feel like they're failures. They feel like they're not good at it. And then no one will do anything for very long that they feel like they're failing at. And then they quit. Yeah. And so Ziva is like, it's based on something called Nishkam Karma Yoga, which means union attained by action hardly taken, lazy meditation. So you're actually not focusing, you're not concentrating, you're not clearing the mind. It feels more like a nap sitting up. Mm-hmm. But in this nap sitting up, you're giving your body rest that's 5 times deeper than sleep, but without the sleep hangover. But the main thing I want to say is that, obviously there's many thousands and thousands of different styles of meditation. But I think if you go in being like, mind, shut up, stop thinking, clear the mind, it's not going to work. And then you're going to stop. Yeah.
So if for people who want to learn more about Ziva meditation and, how do they do that?
Yeah, so everything is zivameditation.com. We actually have a really exciting free event coming up because we're birthing Ziva Magic like right now. And so we're expecting like 15 to 20,000 people to show up live and do these tools together.
That's a lot of people.
I know. I mean, I have a stadium kink, so I like
stadium.
I want to fill stadiums filled with people. I want 13,000 people at the pyramids in Cairo. So but I do think that there is something to the size of the antenna. To get that many people in coherence with each other, holding a prayer for the species. I think that there is power and magic in that. It's not just about my ego. Like certainly my ego, Emily, loves it, but really it's like, I think there's power in that. So people, if you want to learn more about Ziva Magic, you can go to zivameditation.com/workbook. And we actually have like a beautiful workbook where you can find out what type of manifester you are. And then there's a guided visualization from Ziva Magic that you get. And then everything else, Ziva Online, all the meditation, you can find all of that at zivameditation.com. And we're on Instagram as well. I'd say that's our most active social media, which is at Ziva Meditation, which, by the way, Ziva is Z-I-V-A. Some people, it's a little tricky. It's a Sanskrit word that means bliss.
It makes me think of when I was in
Zima?
Like high school. Yeah.
The malt liquor. Well, then we had Zika for a while.
So we had that was after my time, maybe.
We had the mosquito. No, Zika is the mosquito disease. Remember?
Oh, yeah. Well,
where it was like causing like infant malformation.
Oh, I do think I remember hearing about this.
Yeah. So Ziva was tricky. I had to really love it, and I did. Yeah. But it came to me in a meditation. It was like, use the Sanskrit word for bliss. Turns out there's 14 of them. So Ziva is also a Hebrew name that means one who is radiant or kind. Wow. So I thought bliss, radiance, and kindness were a good trifecta.
Yeah, I've heard worse. You definitely embody all those things, and this has been so awesome to connect with you. You're such an inspiration.
Yeah, and I want to celebrate you for showing up today, and I'm going to celebrate both of us for elegantly navigating our death portals.
Yeah. One thing we didn't talk about, both of us have gone through a breakup that was galvanized at Burning Man this year, and that's weeks ago. And we had so much we didn't even talk about that, but the synchronicity around it is it just is wild. It's just never ending reflections, right?
Well, I think that's like the high five from nature, right? When you're on path, and it's just like, synchronicity. And I love that you asked that on the show.
Yeah, it's always leads to something fun. So
yeah. It's so lovely to meet you, Brandon, and thank you for creating this and for all your generosity and all the millions and millions of people that you've helped.
Yeah, thank you for coming on and helping it to shine and reach more people. And I do have one final question for you, my cliche closer. And it is this: in 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Emily Fletcher?
let's see how good it can get.
Yeah.
Let's see how good it can get.
A friend of mine I just had on the podcast, she just launched a podcast, and it's called The Better It Gets, The Better It Gets. So
yes,
yeah,
that's exactly right. There's no ceiling on pleasure.
Yeah.
Let's see how good it can get.
I'm ready. Sign me up, Emily. I'm
the
in.
good news is that the deeper you're willing to go into your pain, the more space you make for pleasure. So you don't deny the pain.
You can't run from it. The higher the branches, the deeper the roots. Right?
Yes, that's right. It's you dig that through the pain. It's the Rumi quote. No, Khalil Gibran. The pain carves out space for more joy.
Yeah, I love Khalil Gibran. Yeah. Beautifully said. And what an awesome way to end it. And thank you again for coming on and sharing your magnetism and wisdom. And thank all of you out there for tuning in and tuning in your beautiful brainwaves and incredible hearts. Until next time, journey well.